Hello, everybody. My name is Jean Herb, and I am the co-director of the New Jersey Climate Change Resource Center at Rutgers University, and happy to be working with our colleagues at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to host this webinar that will last until about 1 o'clock today. The purpose of this webinar is to give an update on the work associated with New Jersey's Priority Climate Action Plan. And Matt, we seem to be hearing our Spanish translators. If there's something to do there, we're good? Okay.
Hi, Jean. This is Daniela. Can you please assign Amber as the interpreter? She's not assigned. That's why we can hear her
Okay.
well.
All right. Thanks everybody for hanging on. Matt, can you assign Amber as the
Thank
translator?
you.
Okay.
Yes, she should be assigned now. Oh, wait,
Okay.
what?
All good? Daniela, I think we're good.
All good.
All right, great, super. Thank you. So if everyone could just take a minute and put in the chat, which is down at the bottom of your screen, it says chat, and put in which municipality, which county, community-based organization, state agency, private company, or other entity that you're affiliated with. Or if you're joining as a private citizen, this gives us a sense to understand who our audience is so we can tailor giving you some information that we think will be helpful to you. So please just take a minute and do that. That'd be great. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the website of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Climate Pollution Reduction Program, which my colleague Ashlyn Spector will be putting into the chat in a minute. We'll put it in several times during the course of this webinar, so you have it handy. Again, I'm Jean Herb. I'm here at the Rutgers University, and I co-direct the Climate Change Resource Center. The Resource Center was established by statute and provides climate service all around the state to decision makers, to state agencies, to local agencies, local governments, community organizations. Ashlyn is going to type in the Resource Center's website as well. We encourage you to sign up to receive our emails with lots and lots of information about climate change here in New Jersey. Joining me today, in addition to our DEP colleagues, is my colleague Ashlyn Spector, who will be monitoring the chat and looking for any questions or comments that you have. And then also my colleague Matt Drews, who is our webmaster today, Dr. Matt Drews. Before we get started, I want to take just a couple minutes to do some housekeeping items. First, there is simultaneous Spanish translation for this webinar, and that's in live time. So if you want to use the translation portion of the webinar, go to the bottom of your screen, click on that globe icon, and select Spanish. I'm going to pause for just a minute for any of you who want to switch over to the Spanish translation. And if you have a question, you can put in the chat. Yeah, and everyone, I see anyone who's just trickling in, if you could take a minute and put in the chat what municipality or county or company or nonprofit or community-based organization you might be affiliated with, or if you're joining as a private citizen, so we can tailor some of the information we're giving to you today to your particular needs. A second housekeeping item that I want to address is that several of you have expressed interest in using closed captions as part of this webinar. Matt, can I take just a minute to ask you to explain how to use the closed captions?
Sure. If you look down towards the bottom bar, you'll see a sign that says show captions, and then you can just enable your captions.
Great. And if anyone's got a question about that, please put it in the chat and we can make sure you can understand how to use that. Third, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording, along with the PowerPoint presentation that DEP will be presenting today, as well as the transcript of the chat, will be posted on DEP's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, and Ashlyn is typing that website into the chat box. We promise we will put that in at least one more time during the course of the webinar. We'll be asking, when I finish up in the next minute, I'm going to turn it over to DEP so they can present some important content for you. There'll be lots of opportunities for you to ask questions and give us input. There's several ways that you can give us input. First, if you have a question or a comment, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you and unmute you so you can ask your question. Since we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to give their comments and ask their questions, we're trying to ask you to be as concise as possible. Second, we also can use the chat box today. If you put a comment or question in the chat, Ashlyn will read it out loud so that our Spanish translators can translate it for others. We'll also use the chat box to put in some links. And to some extent, if you ask questions in the chat, our colleagues at DEP may be able to answer them in the chat as well. To access that chat box, scroll down to the bottom of the screen and click chat. Some of you have already done that by telling us who you are. If you're asking a really long question, it may be longer than the character count in the chat box. So again, try to be concise. If you are asking a question in Spanish, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can ask your question in Spanish and our interpreter will translate it to English. Now that we have covered housekeeping, I'm going to turn it over to our colleagues at New Jersey DEP. The way the rest of the webinar will run is DEP has a lot of content to share with you today. Thanks, Doug. And so we'll be going through that. You can ask questions in the chat during the DEP presentation. If it seems like we need to take a breath and a pause to answer some questions, we will. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And then we'll open it up for discussion. In particular, the DEP has a series of questions that they want to ask all of you to get some feedback for. So this is certainly DEP presenting you with information, but there's definitely some things we want to hear from all of you on, including hearing about where there may be opportunities for work and projects that you have in the pipeline. Yes, we'll be posting the presentation slides. Where there's projects in the pipeline that you think that funding may help to enhance and accelerate, where you might need assistance, technical assistance, where there may be data needs that you have to assist you in implementing the kinds of projects that'll be talked about today. And if there's a particular role that you would like to see DEP play in helping your jurisdiction be able to move forward with some of these innovative projects, we'd like to hear about your thoughts on that too. So with that, I am going to pause and I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues at DEP.
Thank
Helene?
you.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And I'm introducing Helene Barr, who has led the program at DEP in terms of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, who is a bureau chief at the New Jersey DEP and has provided tremendous leadership. And Helene is joined by a number of her team members who will be presenting today, including Doug Benton and Mala Saros. Helene?
Thank you, Jean. And thank you to Rutgers for coordinating this. Really appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar. We are very excited to share details about New Jersey's recently released Priority Climate Action Plan and how your municipality can really help reduce its climate impact. As Jean said, I'm Helene Barr, and I manage the Bureau of Climate Change and Clean Energy here at the department. As a little bit of background, our Bureau provides planning, policy, and technical support to help the state achieve its ambitious greenhouse gas reduction goals. Today, you're going to be hearing from two of my colleagues, Doug Benton and Mala Saros, and together we're going to walk you through the state's Priority Climate Action Plan, describe how your municipality can get involved, and highlight a few upcoming funding opportunities to jumpstart municipal climate action. So I'm going to give a quick overview about New Jersey's PCAP and the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. So the Priority Climate Action Plan that we released in March is the first deliverable submitted to EPA under the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. And this is a two-phase grant program funded via the Inflation Reduction Grant or Act. So under this program, New Jersey and other states, tribes, and regional organizations have received funding to develop 3 climate planning documents between now and 2027. So New Jersey just submitted and published its Priority Climate Action Plan, which we will be talking about today. That's the first box. The second box, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, is due in August of 2025. So we'll be doing ongoing stakeholdering and discussions around that in the coming year. And then in 2027, we'll also be submitting a status update report. So you're going to hear a lot from us over the next few years. There's also a second phase to this grant program, where the EPA made $4.6 billion available in competitive implementation grants to carry out the measures that were proposed in the priority climate action plans. And applications for that were due April 1st. So we're still waiting to hear what, if any, funding New Jersey got, but it should be a very exciting summer when we learn about that. Next slide. So basics. What is the PCAP? Well, it really, or the Priority Climate Action Plan, which we call the PCAP, really builds upon the state's climate planning documents, including the 2019 Energy Master Plan and our Global Warming Response Act 80x50 report. But in this document, we've evolved the recommendations to really identify near-term actionable priorities between now and 2030. It includes measures across 6 different sectors of New Jersey's economy, from transportation to waste. And each measure's greenhouse gas impact was quantified, as well as its benefits on low-income and disadvantaged communities. And with the support of Rutgers University, we conducted a workforce planning analysis because having a strong workforce is really critical to achieving the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals. So what is the role of all of you in this? Local governments really play a critical role in addressing the climate crisis. You have an immediate impact on the daily lives of our community members, from providing vital services to serving as a model for sustainability to information sharing and educating your constituents. You're uniquely placed to foster behaviors that promote more sustainable lifestyles and really have the power to align diverse sectors and strategies for the common good. Here in New Jersey, we absolutely need local governments to take up the mantle of climate action to realize that transition away from fossil fuels. You can serve as a force multiplier, from developing climate action plans to ensuring equity and accessibility, to working with your citizens in business and industries to improve local conditions. And so we're really excited about the actions that we have in the PCAP, what we believe, should be priorities for local governments here, and a lot of the different resources and funding opportunities that are going to be available in the near future that we really want to encourage all municipalities in New Jersey to go after. And I'm going to now hand it off to my colleague, Doug Benton, to discuss the priority measures and those enabling actions. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. So for each emission sector in the PCAP, we identified priority measures, which are broad pathways to achieve greenhouse gas reductions. Then for each of those priority measures, we drilled down a little further to also present a series of enabling actions that are critical for us to achieve the measures. So for the purposes of this presentation,
Hi.
can everyone hear me?
I think we've got a couple folks talking at once.
Okay.
Hang on a second, Doug. Matt, are we okay?
I think we're good now.
Okay.
Someone accidentally unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
So for the purposes of this presentation, we're just going to focus on the measures where New Jersey local governments are listed as key implementers for those actions. For the next set of slides in the presentation, we're going to follow this little framework. So first, I'm going to go through each emissions sector that we included in our PCAP one at a time, and review the priority greenhouse gas reduction measures and enabling actions for local governments in that sector. Then next, I will highlight a number of resources that are available right now for you to get started with those actions in those sectors. And then I'll share a slide with a list of funding opportunities that are currently available for local governments in New Jersey to implement the actions in that sector. I'm not going to go through the requirements of the specific grants that are on those slides, but Mala later in our presentation will spotlight several of the funding opportunities. So you'll get a little bit more detail about several of those during the webinar. And then, of course, as we said, we're going to share all these slides with you and post them on our website, as well as a recording of the webinar after the meeting. So you can go back and look at these lists of funding opportunities, as well as the list of resources that we shared after the presentation to dig further into them. Okay. So in the transportation sector, we had 3 priority measures where local governments were listed as implementers. So the first priority measure is to achieve 30% zero emission medium and heavy duty vehicle sales by 2030 and 100% by 2050. These goals align with the Northeast states for coordinated air use management, or that's also referred to as NESCOM, memorandum of understanding that New Jersey signed onto in 2020. And so this memorandum of understanding committed New Jersey to working collaboratively with other Northeast states to advance and accelerate the market for medium and heavy duty electric vehicles. What local governments in New Jersey can do to support this measure is to take action to replace their diesel and medium heavy duty vehicles and school buses with electric vehicles. That will reduce greenhouse gas emissions from those vehicles. There are several funding sources available, including technical assistance, to support that effort. The second priority measure that we included in the PCAP in transportation is to achieve light-duty vehicle electrification goals that were set out in New Jersey's electric vehicle law. So the New Jersey electric vehicle law established a goal of having 330,000 registered light-duty electric vehicles in the state by 2025, and then increasing that number to 2 million by 2035. The law also calls for 85% of all light-duty vehicles sold or leased in the state to be electric by 2040. So there's several actions local governments can take that are listed in the PCAP to support this measure. They can electrify their light-duty vehicle fleets, as well as optimize the operations of those fleets in local government. Local governments can install and expand the public available electric vehicle charging stations in their communities, and expand available ride sharing and ride hailing services that use electric vehicles to fill first and last mile mobility gaps, particularly in New Jersey's overburdened communities. So the fourth priority measure in transportation was also a measure where local governments were key implementers, and that is the vehicle miles traveled reduction goal. So vehicle miles traveled is a measure of the amount of travel for all vehicles in a geographic region over a given period of time. And we know that reducing the miles that people drive improves air quality while also shifting travel to other transportation modes that promote physical activity and improve public health, and of course, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So local governments under this measure can expand the infrastructure that promotes the use of New Jersey transit and supports safe movement for bicycles and pedestrians. Local governments can also become transit villages through New Jersey Department of Transportation's program. Additionally, local governments themselves can look towards implementing work from home and ride sharing programs that reduce VMT for local government employees and promote the adoption of similar policies for local businesses in your communities where applicable. So that is also to say that all of the actions in the transportation sector will also help reduce criteria pollutants for mobile sources in your communities as well. So this is a slide that we have for each sector that overviews some implementation resources you can use to get started with taking some of these actions. Just to explain the setup of the slide a little further, getting started refers to resources for getting started with implementing greenhouse gas reduction measures in this sector. And the further along items on the right-hand side of the slide refers to resources for those who have maybe some experience already with implementing these measures and are looking to expand or build upon existing programs. So again, we'll be sharing these slides with you all and putting them on our website so you can take a deeper dive into each of these links. But I will highlight a couple things on the slide right now. So for local governments who are just getting started with vehicle electrification, DEP has an electric vehicle resources page for local governments, as well as a broader Drive Green resources page for all things electric vehicle and EV support infrastructure. So you can take a look at those. And then the EPA right now is providing free technical assistance to create comprehensive and customized bus electrification plans. And this is available for local government entities that provide bus services, both school bus and transit buses. It includes public school districts and charter schools. You still need to apply to receive the technical assistance though, so the link to that is there. I'd also highlight that in the near future, the DEP plans to have its own technical assistance available for zero emission fleet transition, which would include more than just buses. So keep an eye out for that as well. As I said, for each sector, we're also including this list of different funding opportunities that are currently available to New Jersey local governments to implement these actions. So you'll see the slide like this for each individual sector. And again, you can go back and take a look at these resources in more detail. I do want to highlight that we will be giving more information on 3 different funding opportunities that are shown here. So DEP's electric school bus grant opportunity, BPU's community energy planning grant and plan implementation grants, and then EPA's community change grant. Later in this presentation, we'll provide more information on those. This list here includes some regular funding sources in the transportation sector that don't currently have funding available or are currently closed for applications, but they may open again in the future as funds are available. So this would be something else to be aware of and to keep an eye on these programs. So in our building sector, we had 1 priority measure where local governments were listed as implementers, and that is to install zero carbon emission space heating and cooling and water heating systems in 400,000 residential properties and 20,000 commercial properties. So this is derived from the Executive Order 316 that the governor signed last year, and zero carbon emission space heating and cooling systems are generally understood to be air source and ground source heat pumps. And these goals are statewide, obviously not individual municipality goals. But to enable these broader goals to be achieved, local governments can implement building decarbonization efforts at local government facilities. That includes energy efficiency improvements as part of those decarbonization efforts. We heard a lot during our PCAP development process that local governments were interested in piloting the use of wastewater at wastewater treatment facilities as sort of in a heat pump type application for building electrification on site. So that's another possibility if you're interested in projects like that. Local governments can also help implement BPU's higher education decarbonization pilot program, which is closed for applications right now, I believe, but local governments are key partners in helping to implement those projects.
Hey, Doug, can we pause for a minute? Because there's a couple clarification questions in the chat. Ashlyn?
Sure.
Yeah, someone's just asking how local government is being defined. And then another question I think was asking to your previous statement of what was this measure entitled? So if you don't mind just maybe answering those real quick. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I think when we're referring to local governments here, we're referring to all, kind of a general encompassing all municipalities, as well as in a lot of cases, counties here. So interchangeably, but a public sector government entity within New Jersey. So then,
Okay, and I'm assuming that within municipality, that also means things like it might be a municipal authority or a utility or something.
right. So yeah, a lot of the programs we'll highlight are available to like government related agencies or authorities, correct?
Okay. Great. And Ashlyn, what was your second question?
Someone was asking, Sherry was asking in the chat, what was this measure entitled? I believe this was something you were saying previously before you had paused. I'm not too sure what, but if Sherry wants to clarify.
Sherry, do you want to clarify your question? I'm going to allow you to talk.
Oh, they said it sounded
Okay.
like 316.
Yeah, I'm hearing an echo.
Okay. Go ahead, 316.
So it's executive order
Oh,
number
okay.
316 or 316 that the governor signed last year. Basically included these particular targets for the number of residential
And
properties.
you know what? I'll put a link to the executive order in the chat. Okay, Doug, back to you.
All right. Thanks for those questions, everyone. It's a lot of information to go through, so definitely keep adding your questions to the chat so we can address them. So I believe, yeah, the last action on this slide is actually something local governments can't quite implement yet because it requires state action to update the building codes first, so that New Jersey municipalities could adopt a stretch code. But keep an eye on that action. So here's a list of some resources for getting started with these actions. I wanted to highlight the local government energy audits. So for all local governments, especially those just getting started, energy efficiency assessments and improvements are really critical to consider prior to embarking on a decarbonization project for a building. But this local government energy audit program is free. Energy audits can allow your local government to examine your facilities and see how you can improve your energy use. And in this program, the whole energy audit process is performed by a contractor. You just need to apply. And I should mention, kind of related to the question we just had, the audits are open to buildings owned by many local government related entities. So this includes New Jersey colleges and universities, as well as 501c3 nonprofit agencies. Buildings and facilities could include things like offices, courtrooms, town halls, police and fire stations, sanitation buildings, transportation structures, schools, and community centers. Another resource we wanted to highlight here is the Energy Savings Improvement Program, or ESIP. This is a form of energy performance contracting that allows government entities to make energy-related improvements to their facilities using the value of energy savings that results from their improvements. So you can check out these resources more after the webinar today. We also have our list of funding opportunities for New Jersey local governments that are available right now in the building sector. And we'll be highlighting a couple of these later on as well. In the electric generation sector, we had two priority measures where local governments were considered key implementers for the actions. The first of which is to achieve 12.2 gigawatts of solar in state by 2030. This aligns with the 2019 Energy Master Plan in New Jersey, as well as our 2020 80 by 50 report. So what local governments can do to support this is to site solar at their local government facilities and other local government buildings and properties. Priority measure 8 is to facilitate the integration of clean distributed energy resources into the grid. So to enable this measure, local governments can pilot grid supportive technologies like vehicle to everything, or V2X is the term that's used. This, for instance, can allow electric buses to power buildings when they aren't being used, as well as pilot and plan microgrids. The local governments can also support the development of resilient facilities through installing renewables and energy storage for their own municipal or county buildings, as opposed to using diesel as a backup generator, or in addition to diesel as a backup generator. These types of systems will help ensure that critical services and operations can continue during times of emergency and or grid electricity disruption.
Doug, while you're taking a breath, just a couple of clarifying questions, which I knew this was going to come up, and I should have asked you before. In your definition of local government, does that include public school districts?
In most cases, no. We're really focusing on what is available to municipalities. But in the instances of like I highlighted in the buildings sector, local government energy audits, those are available to school districts, for instance, and the school bus, New Jersey DEP school bus grants program, that is available to school districts. So, you know, we're mainly focused though on in those list of funding opportunities that the EPA or another federal agency has said is available to, you know, municipalities or counties. So I hope that.
Okay, great. Was there
clarifies.
another clarifying question, Ashley?
Yeah, we do have a quick question from Sherry, and if this might be a longer answer, Doug, we can always move this to a different time. But Sherry's asked, I've been told that our borough can't use solar because we have our own utility. Can you address this?
I would say let's hold that off for just a little bit. We'll put that in the parking lot and get to it in a little bit.
Sounds great.
Sounds
Sherry,
good.
we'll get to your question in a bit.
Okay. All right, Doug, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah. Thanks. So we have a couple different resources that may help you with getting started with implementing these actions. Again, you could take a look later, but for local governments just getting started, we definitely wanted to highlight the role that municipalities can play in New Jersey's community solar program. So local governments can be site hosts, anchor subscribers, multi-municipality project coordinators, and even developers and project owners themselves of community solar projects. This video that we linked here is just a short introductory informational video for explaining how municipalities can participate in New Jersey's community solar program. I also linked a couple resources here related to vehicle to everything, an overview of how that technology works, as well as how direct pay, which is a new IRA or Inflation Reduction Act policy that allows governments and nonprofits to claim tax credits for clean energy projects. That just describes how that works at like sort of a 101 level. Yeah. So we'll keep moving along here. We have a list of available funding opportunities for local governments that you can check out here and after the webinar. In our food waste sector, we had one priority measure, and that is to achieve a 50% reduction in food waste by 2030. So we know the food we eat, produce, and discard produces emissions, particularly the most problematic emissions come from the methane emissions associated with food waste that's in our landfills, because methane is more than 28 times as potent as carbon dioxide in trapping heat in our atmosphere. So we identified in our PCAP 5 different actions that New Jersey local governments can take to help the state reach its food waste emissions reduction goal. The first of which is for counties that may start including food waste reduction as a consideration in their district solid waste management plans. So this would involve the county requesting a planning amendment, developing and submitting an application for the amendment to DEP, and then getting DEP's approval to consider food waste, you know, as part of those plans. Another action that we encourage is for schools to begin adopting the New Jersey school food waste guidelines and institute food waste reduction curriculum in K-12 schools, so local governments can encourage school districts in their community to do these. We have links to those resources on our next slide. The next action, we heard a lot from several different local governments that were during our PCAP engagement that they were interested in piloting a community-wide reusable foodware system pilot program. So that's another option. And then local governments can also consider opportunities to collect and utilize food waste materials that would otherwise be sent to landfills at wastewater treatment facilities themselves. So these systems can recover biogas from organic food waste materials when co-digested with wastewater solids, and then use that energy for on-site power generation. So it reduces the facility's grid supplied energy use and provides a resilient source of power for those critical wastewater treatment operations, particularly during emergency events. And finally, local governments can also seek to implement composting pilot programs, both as discrete small-scale projects or community-wide projects. We heard a lot of interest in this during our PCAP outreach, and we know that many may face hurdles in implementing these types of projects, but as the DEP works through those, there's several other actions that you can take within this sector to reduce food waste emissions. Some of the resources, they're linked here, particularly the Food Waste Toolkit and the New Jersey School Food Waste Guidelines are really great resources. And if you are interested in a food waste recovery to energy system project at a wastewater treatment facility, definitely reach out to us. We're interested to hear about that. Again, we have some funding opportunities for food waste actions. In our halogenated gases sector, we identified one priority measure for greenhouse gas reduction, and this is to reduce halogenated gas emissions from refrigerant equipment. So hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs is what they're called, and other halogenated gases they're used in refrigeration and chillers, and they pose a disproportionate impact to climate change. Halogenated gases are actually considered climate super pollutants because these greenhouse gases have hundreds to thousands of times the heat trapping power of carbon dioxide. So the term that is used to describe the heat trapping power of these gases is global warming potential, or GWP. One could consider generally a high GWP refrigerant as any refrigerant gases that have a heat trapping power of 150 or more times that of CO2. So local governments can help implement this measure by replacing their high GWP refrigeration equipment in their facilities and buildings. They may also help promote the replacement more broadly in buildings throughout the community. So we know this is sort of an area of greenhouse gas emission reduction that we found through our previous engagement is relatively lesser known or a newer topic to a lot of local government officials and even stakeholders more broadly. So one thing local governments can do to get started is understand these pollutants and the implications of them a little bit more. So we included a couple links to get more information about HFCs. And if you are a local government or related official, you could, and you're looking to do more right now, you could promote the EPA's voluntary green chill program, which is a voluntary program where private businesses commit to reducing their company-wide refrigerant emissions. A couple of our funding opportunities for halogenated gas sector actions for local governments are listed here. Again, you can take a look at them later. And finally, last but not least, we have our natural working land sector, where we have one priority measure, which is to maintain, protect, and enhance New Jersey's natural carbon sinks. This is an essential action that must be done for the state to reach its statewide greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals by 2050. So we know it takes longer for carbon to accrue in these types of systems. So the benefits will take years to be realized. In that sense, the state has set out some targets for the number of street trees, acres of restored forest, and blue carbon sequestration projects that it wants to complete by 2030 to help reach the goals. So by no means do we expect, local government to plant all of these trees or install all of this living shoreline, but the DEP definitely needs local governments to help implement these actions in order for us to achieve these goals together. And lots of resources available for getting started here. Kind of organize these by carbon sequestration type or lands type on the slide. Particularly if you're looking to get started with forest carbon sequestration actions, municipalities can look at the linked sources to create community forest management plans or stewardship plans following New Jersey's Urban and Community Forestry Program guidelines, or also develop an urban tree inventory and gain accreditation. Both of those things help unlock more funding opportunities for your municipality. We'd also like to highlight some tools where you can quantify some of your terrestrial carbon sinks or learn for opportunities to plan projects, particularly the free Coastal Resilience Explorer tool allows you to see areas of coastline in your community that need restoration. And then the tool shows you which types of restoration techniques are suitable for specific locations on your coastline. There's a couple other DEP financial assistance opportunities that aren't open right now, but if you are a little further along in working on these actions, you might consider reviewing the requirements for these types of programs and prepare to apply for one when those programs open up again. Short list of some of the currently available funding opportunities for these actions, but there could be some private opportunities as well to check out. So I know that was a lot of information, but we are going to try to hand it off to Mala now, who's gonna
and before we do that, if you don't
Yeah.
mind, Doug, I think there's a couple questions maybe good if we can tackle before we hand off to Mala. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a few for some of the different sections you went through. One of them is first regarding food waste. So someone said, is there a link for a playbook for the permitting process for composting for municipalities? So if there's something available online or any information.
I can jump in here, Doug, if you want.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we have a playbook at the moment. I know there's some updated rules that are being contemplated here at the department, but I think that's an excellent suggestion. So we'll
Okay.
definitely bring that back to the team and
Thanks.
circle back.
Great, and we do have just a couple other quick questions. So Dennis had asked if you could please provide a list of the high GWP refrigerated gases so we can check, they want to check their town HVAC.
Maybe we
So,
can just even put that in the website.
yeah, there's a list of the gases. I will link Dennis the website to look at any past presentations, but just wanted to bring that up if there's a quick answer.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a list associated with the greenhouse gas monitoring and reporting rule. We host a list of
Yeah, and we can put that link in. Any other pressing questions?
Let's see. So Mario had asked if there are any penalties for municipalities that don't meet the 2030 and 2050 state electrification goals.
there aren't any
No, the answer is no.
penalties,
They're
no.
goals, right? They're goals.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I think
Okay.
the rest we can
Yeah, we've been trying to
table for
answer a lot,
little
and
bit.
we've been answering a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm keeping an eye on the time as well. So Mala, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to briefly review this school bus grant as well as two others. Next slide. So the school bus grant from our agency is in its third year, and that's $15 million for this 2024 application period. As you can see, the applications are due very soon. Within the 270,000 to 350,000 range, the higher end of that range is for overburdened communities. You see here listed the eligible applicants being schools and school districts, as well as school bus contractors. To the eligibility requirements, I'll also mention eligible buses that are covered, that would be covered or eligible for this grant include all electric vehicles, not hybrid, new vehicles, large school buses in the type C and D category of size, and based on additional criteria such as the vehicle miles traveled in New Jersey and the vehicle's electric range, as well as bus driver and school personnel training. Next slide. The second grant here, as you see, is the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities grant. Next slide. So this funding is in support of eligible municipalities for them to implement high priority, high impact, practical and cost effective municipal projects. The projects to focus on are those to support energy resilience, renewable energy, and or energy efficiency. The total funding available is approximately $3 to $4 million, including all the awards, and eligible municipalities are encouraged to submit up to $500,000 worth of projects. In terms of the second bullet here, the Community Energy Planning Grant Program is actually step one for eligible municipalities to have a community energy plan in place before they can apply for the implementation, the CEPI funding, but both the CEP and CEPI grant applications are due later this month. And then as far as overburdened municipalities, they are defined in terms of the municipality having at least 50% of its population living in an overburdened community per the DEP's and New Jersey law definition. Plus, there's an additional criterion regarding poverty or municipality distress. Next slide, please. You can see here listed the eligibility requirements. And if your municipal government doesn't already have a community energy plan in place, an equivalent plan is another option. It's a community energy plan that was not created through the CEPG program, but substantially addresses the same elements, such as having a timeline, implementation plan, having been adopted by a municipal resolution, and covering the strategies identified in Sustainable Jersey's community energy plan work plan template. And that's just on the sustainablejersey.com website. Yeah, thank you. And the last of the three are these EPA grants. Next slide. So of the $2 billion available, 10 to $20 million, as you see, is for track one. Track one, which has been the focus of Doug's comments in this presentation, are implementation and infrastructure grants. And EPA is looking for multifaceted applications that cover both climate action and other pollution reduction strategies. Track one is obviously the majority of funds under this community change grants, and there are rolling awards. So you're encouraged to submit applications ASAP. You also see track two listed and additional technical assistance funding. The technical assistance funding is for both pre and post award help. Next slide. The eligibility for this grant, as you see, the lead organization has to be a community-based organization, but a statutory partner is also required, and that may be local government and the other entities listed here. And projects must be a community identified project. Disadvantaged community is as per the White House definition, and you can see the low income and disadvantaged communities highlighted in green on the map. Next slide. Finally, the Atlas Public, can you advance a couple? Thank you. The Atlas Public Policy website maintains a really useful climate portal that covers a lot of additional available funding opportunities. The links in that right side of the slide are all different parts or filters of the Atlas Public Policy webpage. We encourage you to look at those. It is important to know that this web portal is free, but you do need to register and set up a login. And so now I turn the mic back over to Rutgers unless there were any pressing questions for me.
Ashley, any questions that are outstanding? Because then I have a couple things to tease out from people.
Nothing that I see
Okay.
that's an immediate.
Okay, so this is sort of an opportunity where we've got about 8 to 10 minutes left in this. But one of the things, some of the things that DEP would like to hear from you all on, and we know that this was a tremendous amount of content. And so before we close today, I'll ask DEP to talk a little bit about how you can all continue to stay informed with these developments. But one of the things, some of the things that DEP would like to hear from all of you on is how does this resonate with some of your priorities as local governments in particular? What kind of support do you feel like you need, whether that's from DEP or elsewhere? What kind of data do you feel like you need? What kind of role would you like to see DEP play in terms of supporting you? So these are a couple of the questions we want to sort of tease out with you. Thanks for pulling up that slide. So you can raise your hand, or it might be, I see a couple folks raising hands, so that's great. And you can also put the ideas in the chat, because again, we're kind of in a spot where we are running tight here. Kristen Ace, I'm gonna let you talk. Kristen?
Hi, yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I put a little note in the chat about grants for reforestation. Right now, they're very complex, and the information that we have to gather to do any reforestation is almost impossible for us. But as a local shade tree commissioner, boots on the ground for the past 11 years, we are watching our tiny community forests dying because of invasives, and we need help. And they aren't just in overburdened communities, although we do have 3 reforestation projects we'd like to do in an overburdened community, but we need help. We need money, and we need the grants to be, we can't do a $2 million project. We need like grants that are $150,000 to $300,000.
And Kristen, can you tell us where you're from?
Yep, I'm in Morristown.
Okay.
Yep.
And Kristen, when you say help, do you mean help in terms of funding to implement the projects, or help in terms of even just pulling together the design of the projects for funding?
Yeah, I've been very blessed. I work with some amazing people. We work with an ecologist. We're all very highly trained on my commission, and we are moving into having the ability to have the knowledge to reforest, but we need the money to do it.
Okay.
To remove the invasives, to put the tiny trees and the shrubs and the understory and the ground cover in place, we need money.
Thanks, Kristen. Super helpful. And I see, I apologize if my pronunciation, Siva Jonata. And I'm gonna allow you, unmute you, Siva.
Yes, I'm from Morris Township, right next to Morristown. I had a couple of comments about the transportation issue. The goal was to get 30% zero emission, but we're trying to purchase EVs in our township, but there's a backlog in purchasing, just to let you know. So even though we're trying to buy them, we were not able to get them because of the backlog in purchase for these the companies in making them.
Thanks, Siva. And Helene, I see you nodding your head. Do you guys have any thoughts on that issue in terms
Yeah,
of
I mean, we're, state has its own goals for purchasing EVs for our own fleet, and we are hitting the same roadblocks, unfortunately, where there's just the supply issue. So we recognize that, yeah.
Okay. And then I see Walter Lane has his hand up. Hey, Walter. I'm gonna allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just see, we've
Oh, Walter, you there?
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I thought I unmuted.
That might have been me. Sorry.
You know, our county's taken a lead on a lot of these types of funding opportunities, but it's a resource issue in municipalities. So some of this funding could be used to help the municipalities with like grant development and grant application preparation. I think would go a long way. We tried to do that here. But also I think money needs to be also spent on some of the planning for these things, because you just can't start transitioning your fleet without looking at some of the bigger costs for electric vehicles, for example. Like we have to look at the infrastructure upgrades that if you switch your entire fossil fueled, you know, gas fired, diesel fueled fleet over to electric, you're probably going to have to upgrade your electrical service and your panels and your other infrastructure to allow that. So that's something that's got to be a cost that's planned for. So any technical assistance for planning and grant development would be very helpful.
DP, do you have a response? or
Yeah,
just-
I can say, I know, so we have recently put out and awarded an RFP to CalSTART to provide technical assistance for large fleet transition. So you can expect the next year, you know, for that, the opportunity to be out on the streets and for, you know, folks that have fleets to be able to apply to get that level. We definitely have recognized that as a need for sure, but thank you for highlighting it again.
And I see some really super helpful comments, input, DP in terms of this question in the chat, so that'll give you some feedback. DP, do you want to ask a second question? Maybe we've got another couple minutes. Because I can. Okay. So I think we got a little bit of feedback here in terms of what would empower your local governments to do this. If you could reflect a little bit on any particular type of role that you'd like to see DP in particular play to support your efforts, that would be super helpful to hear from you. And while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to see if Ashlyn has any questions in the chat that need answering.
Less of questions and more of some broad feedback that you know, people are having trouble with taking proactive action and potentially having some additional assistance, a professional coming in and help to identify project needs and helping out municipalities with the project identification and grant process would be incredibly useful. So that's some feedback that we're seeing. And that similar sentiment to if there's any kind of guidance for any K through 12 schools. We understand that Doug had answered earlier that schools aren't the focus, but it seems there might be some will there if there's some information.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I see we're kind of at the hour. What I'd like to do is, Helene, turn it back to you. Just if you could kind of give us a closeout, but one thing in particular I would ask if you could comment on or offer information on is how folks can best stay in the loop with DP's next steps in terms of what listservs they should be on, what's up. You know, we know the Energy Master Plan is starting its update. Any input you can give everybody in terms of next steps and
Sure.
stay in the loop.
Yep, at the bottom of the CPRG webpage is our listserv. It's the general climate listserv for the department. So please join that. And that is how we push out most of our information. In terms of what is next, as mentioned at the top of the webinar, DEP is now going to be working on its comprehensive climate action plan, or the PCAP, which is due in August of 2025. So that plan is really going to align very closely with the update to the Energy Master Plan that's starting pretty much right now. So we totally recognize a lot of stakeholder fatigue around climate. So we're asking folks, you know, to please participate in the EMP hearings so that we can sort of use that feedback to inform the development of the PCAP. So that's kind of what's slated next. So here, starting on May 20th is the first meeting through early June.
Thanks. Thanks, Helene. So if you're not on that listserv, then get on that listserv. And Ashlyn's putting the DEP CPRG website back into the into the chat. Please know that if you offered some comments or questions here in the chat, DEP will be reviewing those. As a reminder, this recording and the transcript from the chat, as well as the PowerPoint slides, will go up onto that DEP CPRG website probably by early next week. Great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, DEP, for your incredibly hard work. This is an overwhelming amount of initiative. Thank you. Stay
Yeah.
well, everybody.